Daf Yomi, Tractate Sanhedrin, page 71b. Top of the page with the words Dechuli Kra Yetira Hu. Since the entire verse is superfluous, the Gemara on the previous Amud is saying about the Mishnah that you can learn from the Mishnah that we require a verse to be fulfilled precisely as it is written, in strict conformity with the literal sense, not in any looser or more expansive fashion. The Gemara rejects the suggestion. This is no proof from here. Here it is different. The subject was about a Ben Sora Umore. Well, maybe it's a good idea to start from the Mishnah, actually, on the previous Amud, to give you context. The Mishnah says, if one of the parents was without hands, or lame, or mute, or blind or deaf, their son does not become considered a stubborn or rebellious son. As it is stated, then shall his father and his mother lay hold of him, and bring him out to the elders of the city, and to the gate of his place. And they shall say to the elders of the city, this son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voices. He is a glutton and a drunkard. Deuteronomy 21:19-20. The sages derive, then shall his father and his mother lay hold of him, but not people without hands, who cannot do this, and bring him out. So they basically are saying that the father and the mother have to lay hold of him. So if they have no hands, then they can't do that. It's not figuratively like let's just say they grab hold of me. They could tell someone to do it. No, they have to physically do it. Bring him out, not lame. Okay. Then the father and mother shall take hold of him, but not people without hands who cannot do this, and bring him out, but not lame people who cannot walk. And they shall say, but not mutes. This son of ours, if to say the son of ours, but not blind people who can point to their son and say, he will not obey our voices, but not a deaf person who cannot hear, whether or not he declined to obey them. After he is brought before the elders of the city, he is admonished before 3 people, and then they flog him for having stolen. If he sins again, he is judged by a court of 23 judges. Okay, and according to what we said earlier, this doesn't say here, but I'm just saying that this all has to happen within 3 months. All of this. This, that, the court, whipping, this, back. It's like almost impossible to have the case. Actually, the Gemara says it's impossible. Anyway, but he's not stoned because the first 3 judges before whom he had been flogged are present there, as stated, as son of ours. He's not stoned unless the first 3 judges before whom he had been flogged are present there. As it is stated, this son of ours, this is the son who was already flogged before you. Okay, now we're in the Talmud, saying that the Gemara draws a conclusion that you can learn from the Mishnah that we require a verse to be fulfilled precisely as it is written, in strict conformity with its literal sense, and not in looser or more expansive fashion. The Gemara rejects the suggestion. There's no proof from here. Here it is different, and now we're on the top of 71b. Dekuli kra yitiruhu. Since this entire verse is superfluous, the verse's description of how the father and mother bring the son out appears to be unnecessary, and therefore each element in the verse limits the halacha in a precise manner. When a verse is not superfluous, it is not strictly interpreted. Umatirin b'nei shlosha lamali ba'asri saya amrabaye hachi kamar matirin bo b'nei shnayim umalkinoso b'nei shlosha. The Mishnah teaches that after the rebellious son is brought before the elders of the city, he is admonished before 3 people. The Gemara asks, why do I need him to be admonished before 3 people? 2 witnesses should suffice. As in all other matters of halacha, Abaye says, this is what the Mishnah is saying. He is admonished before 2 people who serve as witnesses, and he is flogged before 3 people who constitute a court. Okay. Malkus. Beben Tzoyre Moire. Heichik Desiva. Kid Rabbi Yavahu. Diam Rabbi Yavahu Lamadnu. V'yisru mi v'yisru. V'yisru mi ben. Uben mi ben. V'haya im ben hakois haroshe. The Gemara asks, where is it written that lashes are administered to a stubborn and rebellious son? There's no explicit mention of lashes in the verse. The Gemara answers, it is as Rabbi Abahu said in another context. As Rabbi Abahu says, we learned the meaning of the word chastise, as stated with regard to a defamer. And the elders of that city shall take that man and chastise him. Deuteronomy 22:18. By means of a verbal analogy from the word chastise, stated with regard to a rebellious son, Deuteronomy 21:18, and the meaning of the word chastise, a lot of verses derived from the word son, that appears in the same verse. And the meaning of the word son, with regard to a rebellious son, is derived from a similar word bin, which is stated with regard to lashes. Then it shall be, if the wicked man deserves to be flogged. V'haya im bin hakot harasha. I didn't know it was bin. I always thought it was bain. V'haya im bin hakot harasha. It shall be. Then it shall be, if the wicked man deserves to be flogged. Okay. I didn't realize it was bin. V'haya im bin hakot harasha. 11:25. Okay. I guess so. 25:2. Consequently, the chastisement mentioned with regard to both the defamer and rebellious son involved flogging. Chaza v'kilkel nidoim be'esem shloisha v'chule. Hami ba'ele ze v'lo soimin. Im kein lichtov banenu hu. My banenu ze. Shema minatarti. The Mishnah teaches if he sins again, he is judged by a court of 23 judges, which must include the 3 judges before whom he was brought initially. As it is stated, this son of ours, this is the son who was already flogged before you. The Gemara asks, but isn't that verse needed for the derivation mentioned earlier? This son of ours, but not blind people, who cannot point to their son and say this. The Gemara answers, if so, that these words serve only to teach that the original judges must also be present. The verse should have written, he is our son, which would indicate he who was already flogged before you. What is the meaning of this son of ours? Conclude 2 conclusions from it. That the 3 original judges must also be present at the second trial, and that the son of blind parents cannot become stubborn, cannot become a stubborn and rebellious son. New Mishnah. Barach ad shelo yigmar dino yachar kach hikif zakan hatachton patur. Okay. Im mishnigmar dino barach yachar kach hikif zakan hatachton chayav. Okay, this is an interesting one. If the rebellious son ran away before he was sentenced, and afterwards, before he was caught, his lower beard grew around, he is exempt. We already explained what lower beard means. But who's monitoring this? You know? It's like so moot point. It's like, it might be code for something. I don't know. Okay, anyway, his lower beard grew. He is exempt from the death penalty. Once his lower beard grows, he can no longer be judged as a stubborn and rebellious son. But if he ran away only after he was sentenced, and afterward, by the time he was caught, his lower beard had already grown around, he is liable to receive death penalty. Once he is sentenced to death, his sentence remains in force. Gemara, Amar Rabbi Chanina ben Noach shebe'erech Hashem yachar kach nizgaya pater. Well, v'nishtana dino, nishtana mitato. Rabbi Chanina says, if a descendant of Noah blessed the name of God, that's a euphemism for the opposite, and afterwards he converted to Judaism, he is exempt from punishment, since his trial procedure changed, and the death penalty to which he is subject also changed. A descendant of Noah is tried by a single judge, and he can be sentenced to death on the basis of the testimony of a single witness, even without having been forewarned. Whereas a Jew is tried by a court of 23 and can be executed only on the basis of the testimony of two witnesses, and this only after having been forewarned. A descendant of Noah is killed by the sword for this transgression, whereas a Jew is killed by stoning. Okay? Neima Misayele Parach Ad Shelo Nigmar Dino Yachar Kach Yikiv Zakan Atachton Patu. My timer. Lama Shubdarin Hoil Vishtani Vishtani. The Gemara asks, shall we say that the Mishnah supports him? If the rebellious son ran away before he was sentenced, and afterward, before he was caught, his lower beard grew around, he is exempt. Zakana Tachton. What's the Gemashi of that? Let's see here. Zakana Tachton. 1026. Okay. What is the reason? Okay. His Lord, he is exempt from the death penalty. What is the reason for this exemption? Isn't it because we say, since the legal status has changed, his liability has also changed? Lo shani hachadi avarashta lav barkat lahu. The Gemara rejects this claim. No, it is different here with regard to a stubborn and rebellious son, as were he now after he grew his lower beard to perform the same actions that render one liable to a rebellious son, he would not be fit for execution, and therefore he is exempt. This is different from a Gentile who blessed God's name and then converted, and as even if he blessed God after having converted, he would still be liable to receive the death penalty. Tashema, the Gemara suggests coming here proof from the latter half of the Mishnah. Im shenigmar dinoi barach yachar kikiv zakan takton chayav nigmar dino kamart ka'amrit nigmar dino gavre katilahu. But if he ran away only after he was sentenced, and afterward, by the time he was caught, his lower beard had already grown, he is liable to receive the death penalty. This indicates that even though his legal status had changed, he is nevertheless executed. The Gemara rejects this argument. There is no proof from here. You speak of a case where he was already sentenced to death. Once he was already sentenced, he is considered a dead man, and his verdict can no longer be changed. Tashma ben noach shigas chaveroi uba eshes chaveroi v'nisgayer pater. Okay. Also came to Israel. Nisgayer chayev amai nema hoyev ishtani. The Gemara suggests coming here another proof from what was stated in a Braita. If a descendant of Noah struck and killed another Gentile. I wonder why they say descendant of Noah. Anyway, that's what it's saying here. Just a disclaimer, as I often say, whatever is being read here does not reflect my own opinion. I'm simply reading the Talmud. Disclaimer. I'm not stating it as I agree or disagree, but definitely not agree. At any rate, let's continue. The descendant of Noah struck and killed another Gentile or engaged in intercourse with the wife of another Gentile, and then he converted to Judaism, he's exempt. But if he did this to an Israelite, killing a Jew, or engaging in intercourse with the wife of a Jew, and then he converted, he's liable. But why should this be so? Let us say that since his legal status changed, his liability changed as well, and therefore he should no longer be subject to the death penalty. The Braita indicates that this rationale is not accepted. Dino umitato beinon, v'hai dino ishtani, mitato lo ishtani. The Gemara refutes this proof. There is no comparison between the cases, because in order to nullify one's death penalty, we require a change both in his trial procedure and in the specific death penalty to which he is subject. But this descendant of Noah, through his trial and procedure change, though his trial and procedure changed, the death penalty to which he is subject did not change. Because Saif Hashta Saif, the Gemara raises a difficulty. Granted, with regard to the case of a murder, this answer is understandable, as initially, while he was still a Gentile, he was subject to death by sword, and now he is a Jew and is still subject to death by sword. Consequently, there is no change in the punishment to which he is subject. But, with regard to the case of one who engaged in intercourse with a married woman, initially when he was still a Gentile, he was subject to death by the sword, but now that he is a Jew, he is subject to death by strangulation. Accordingly, there is a change in both his trial procedure and in the type of capital punishment to which he is subject. The Gemara answers, the case of a married woman mentioned here involves a man who engaged in intercourse with a betrothed young woman, so that in both this case, where he engaged in intercourse with her while he was still a descendant of Noah, and that case, where he did so when he was already a Jew, he is subject to death by stoning. Since there was no change in the type of capital punishment to which he is subject, he remains liable and is executed. Also came Israel. The Gemara raises an objection, but the Braita teaches the case where he did this to an Israelite, engaged in intercourse with the wife of a Jew, similar to the case where he engaged in intercourse with the wife of another Gentile. Both cases seem to be addressing identical circumstances, and the unique halacha governing a betrothed woman exists only for Jews, not for descendants of Noah. Accordingly, the Braita must be discussed in the case of a fully married woman. Rather, the lenient punishment is included in the severe one. Initially, when he was a Gentile, he was liable to receive a more severe punishment, and now that he is a Jew, he is liable to receive a more lenient punishment. The lenient punishment is included in the severe one, and he remains liable to receive lenient punishment. By contrast, if the punishment that he is now liable to receive is more severe, he is exempt from all punishment. The Gemara raises a difficulty. This works out well according to the rabbis, who say that death by the sword is more severe than death by strangulation. Therefore, instead of Noah engaged in intercourse with a married woman, so that he was subject to death by the sword, and then he converted to Judaism, so that his sentence was lightened to death by strangulation, he is still executed. But according to the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, who says that death by strangulation is more severe than death by the sword, what can be said? The convert should now be exempt from all punishment. Rabbi Shimon Savarle Ketanai Dve Binashi. Davar Kol Misamol Levinoach Eno El Bechenek. The Gemara answers, Rabbi Shimon holds in accordance with the opinion of the Tana of the school of Menashe, who says, any death mentioned in connection with the descendants of Noah is nothing other than death by strangulation, and not death by the sword. Accordingly, if a descendant of Noah engaged in intercourse with a married woman, and then he converted, his punishment did not become more severe with his conversion. Rather, if he stayed the same, death by strangulation, and he is still executed. The Gemara challenges this. Granted, with regard to the case of the married woman, this answer is understandable. Initially, when he was still a descendant of Noah, he was subject to death by strangulation, and now, after his conversion, he is subject to death by strangulation. But, as for a murderer, initially when he was still a descendant of Noah, according to the Tana of the school of Menashe, he was subject to death by strangulation, but now, after his conversion, he is subject to death by the sword. The Gemara explains the lenient punishment is included in the severe one, and according to the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, death by strangulation is more severe than death by the sword. Consequently, he is executed. Okay, I think we can do this. Leima Mesele, Sarcha, Biarachach, Begora, Bagra, Tidan Bechenex, we see my time law. Mishum, Lab Mishum, the Hoyer Lishni, Nicola, Shekane, Hachad Ishni, Camri, Amar le Yochanan Tana, Tani, Tidon Miskila. The Gemara suggests, shall we say that the following bright that supports Rabbi Chanina, if a betrothed woman sinned by committing adultery, and afterwards she reached her majority, at which time she was brought to trial, she is sentenced to death by strangulation like any other betrothed woman who commits adultery. What is the reason that she is not sentenced to death by stoning, the punishment imposed upon a betrothed woman who commits adultery? Is that not since her legal status changed, her liability changed as well? And all the more so here, in the case of the son of Noah who converted, where he changed completely from a Gentile to a Jew, his sentence should change. The Gemara rejects his argument. No proof can be derived from here. As doesn't Rabbi Yochanan say to the Tana, who taught this Braita before him, amend your version of the Braita and teach she is sentenced to death by stoning. And that's the end of that. New Mishnah. Ben Sofer Mora Nidan al Shem Sofer. Yom Zakrai Val Yom Chayev. Shem Yisasan Shalashayim Hana Lehen V'Hana La'olam. Tzaddikim Ra Lehen V'Ra La'olam. The Mishnah says a stubborn and rebellious son is sentenced to death, not because of the severity of the transgression that he already committed, but on account of his ultimate end, because the boy of his nature will grow up and lead an immoral life, and it is better that he should die while he is still innocent before causing excessive harm, and not die before he becomes guilty. This is because the death of the wicked is beneficial to them, because they can no longer sin, and it is also beneficial to the world, which is now rid of those who do it harm. Conversely, the death of the righteous is detrimental to them, as they can no longer engage in performance of mitzvot, and is also detrimental to the world, as the righteous are now absent from it. Okay. By way of association, the Mishnah continues, the wine and sleep of the wicked are beneficial to them and beneficial to the world, as when they are sleeping under the influence of wine, they do not cause harm to others. And conversely, the wine and sleep of the righteous are detrimental to them and detrimental to the world, as the wine and sleep prevent them from engaging in good deeds. The dispersal of the wicked, so that they are not found in close proximity to each other, is beneficial to them, as they are less likely to provoke each other to sin, and it is beneficial to the world. The dispersal of the righteous is detrimental to them and detrimental to the world. The assembly of the wicked in one place is detrimental to them and detrimental to the world, while the assembly of the righteous is beneficial to them and beneficial to the world. The tranquility of the wicked is detrimental to them and detrimental to the world, while the tranquility of the righteous is beneficial to them and beneficial to the world.